Okay. Hello, everyone. Hi, fellow professionals. Welcome to my presentation. I hope you can hear me. I've had to disable my Zoom controls because of dual monitor issues, so it might be tough for me to get any feedback. I think the only way to communicate with me is going to be to come on voice. So if there's anything that I do need to be told, you might have to say it out loud. Okay, so a couple of preliminary caveats. Firstly, I'm going to have to go quite quickly because of time constraints. Secondly, I haven't really done this before online, so I have no idea how well it's going to go. Please bear with me. I'll try not to breathe too loud into my microphone. So to get the first boring part out the way, I'm William Owens. I'm a PhD student at Seoul National University, and what I'm presenting today is part of my dissertation project. Hopefully, someone's going to award me a PhD for having done this, but it remains to be seen. I've certainly raised some eyebrows with it at uni, so hopefully you'll find it as interesting as I have. So what I'm going to be doing is using conversation analysis, which is kind of it's a very different approach to SLA to what we're used to in the traditional field. My main aim is to kind of give you an accessible view of it if you're not familiar with it, hopefully stimulate some interest and show what it can do. Not going to go too deep because we've only got 25 minutes, but yeah, this is kind of what conversation analysis does in SLA. So my personal view is that we're going to need this kind of approach in the future because NLP, natural language processing, sort of teaching computers how to understand us and talk back to us, is obviously very limited if you just teach computers grammar and functions, the same kind of things that we teach in a CELTA type lesson. And I think this stuff here, the value of it is going to be in really teaching machines to understand the nuance of human language. But we'll see whether you agree with that slightly controversial statement as we go through. So we're starting with a little quote from Luke Meddings and Scott Thornberry in their wonderful book about teaching unplugged. I'm sure you've all had a moment to read it, so I won't read it out loud. So I think hopefully it generates three questions. The first one, what are these interactional features that are replicated by natural conversation? I think it's great to say, you should have natural conversations with your students because it replicates what happens in real conversations. But what exactly are those things? We need a concrete example, which is what I'm going to give you today. The second question, it's been argued, that's a very vague and unpersuasive thing to say. Lots of things have been argued and lots of them were not right. So we need some evidence, which hopefully I'll be able to provide. And this third one is to say, that's not to say teaching should simply be free-ranging, informal chat. Well, what should it be then? If you're a teacher listening to this, what's your takeaway? And I'll try to address that at the end if I haven't gone over time. So the first thing I'm going to do is compare communicative competence and interactional competence. I'm sure we're all familiar with communicative competence. Basically gives you a score. So let's say these two people are talking. This guy's a 6.5, this guy's a 9. They'll probably be able to interact with no problems, but this guy is better. And if this guy goes and talks to someone else, he'll still be a 6.5. That's his communicative skill. Because your score exists within you and stays with you, it's what we call solipsistic. Doesn't really depend on who you're talking to or what you're doing. And it's well defined, or at least we try to define it. The aim is to define it. And so we have these 4 skills. We have grammar lessons, vocab lessons, functions lessons. And the idea is that if you can do all of those things, then you have high communicative competence. Does that mean you're good at achieving things through communication in the real world? Not necessarily. That's interactional competence. All interactional competence is answering the question, can you do what needs to be done? How well do you get things done? As such, it depends on where you are and what you're doing, and it depends on who you're talking to. For example, talking to a pharmacist about a personal problem, yeah, that you could take a functions approach. and do a CELTA lesson on it and say, okay, what grammar, what expressions do you need to do this? The interactional competence approach would be more like kind of, how would a person hedge what they're going to say so that they don't surprise or upset the person they're talking to. If you're about to discuss a really personal problem, how do you change your tone of voice? How do you might use euphemisms, for example. You might rely on things that you both kind of know, so you can find a roundabout way of saying things without saying them too directly. Essentially, interactional competence is millions of little tricks and strategies, is how I like to think of it. And I'm going to show you one of them today. And it's such a small, tiny thing that you might not think it's really worth spending 3 years researching, which is what I've done. But but I have. There, there you have it. Lots of people do. It's becoming more and more popular, these CA studies in SLA. The other thing to bear in mind is it's not necessarily language focused. If this person achieved what they need to achieve by flapping their arms and grunting, they would have high interactional competence. As a result, people from the pure SLA camp often say, we're looking at language acquisition, you're looking at communication, they're completely different things. And that's a valid thing, So why is this in a language education conference? Because we believe in the social CA camp that language is communication, communication is language, and separating the two to look at language in isolation from communication isn't going to tell you everything you need to know. So what I'm going to show you is it's two extracts. This is the first one. They're from lessons between two people, G, who is the language learner, and W, who is me, who is the teacher, effectively. I have to call myself W for methodological purposes. So just a bit of background. G tends to resist her language proficiency being made public, whether that's through corrections or whether it's through talking about her English. She tends to try and move away from that in conversation. This is an example of one micro strategy she does to do that, and it's from G and W's third class together. So we're going to start by listening.
I told you before.
Did you?
I shared like a bit of the experience when we were talking about speaking, and I said I merely made any mistakes when I was talking
Oh,
to
of
my
course you did.
students.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, we'll go through this first part and I'll explain what I think is going on. So we start with this.
I told you before.
I told you before. I'm sure we've all heard that before. W has forgotten something that G told him once in the past, and she's reprimanding him for having forgotten. And she starts reminding him. It's impolite to forget something that someone has told you before. So W has committed a small crime by not remembering what she had told him. She starts reminding him and starts telling the details of this story about when she had been teaching English in the past. What W does in response is he actually interrupts her in the middle of a sentence. That's what these little square brackets mean. They mean that these two things happened at the same time. And usually you don't interrupt someone without a reason. I think the reason he does it here is because it's important for him to jump in and say, oh, of course, I remember. I haven't forgotten. He's trying really hard to show that he hadn't forgotten. It had just momentarily slipped his mind. That's so important that he says it twice. Of course you did. Of course you did. Did you?
I shared like a bit of the experience when we were talking about speaking, and I said I merely made any mistakes when I was talking
Oh,
to
of
my
course you did.
students.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Right. He has he repaired the damage? G seems to think so. She says, yeah, we could analyze that as a kind of accepting. But W continues.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yes, and you said you
That's
were.
the part. Well, anyway.
Said, yes, and you said you were. Even though G has said yeah, and said are possibly carrying on to start talking about something else. W isn't satisfied that the damage has been repaired. He's actually moving to prove that he remembers this situation, and he's now going to move on and give all the details and say, oh yeah, of course, because then you said this and he said that. Yeah, I remember. He's moving on to do this. But remember, this is a conversation about a time when G was talking about mistakes she'd made in her English. It's not her favorite conversation topic. And she's already said, yeah. So her next move is to try and move the topic on from there, tries to change the subject. And that's what happens in this line here. I'll just play it one more time because it's a really short extract, but a lot happens in this line.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yes, and you said you were.
Well, anyway.
Okay. So the way I analyze this, this orange part is W is evidencing his memory. The first thing G does is say, that's fine. And this seems like a token of forgiveness. She's saying, yes, okay, I thought you'd been rude, but okay, you've proved that you do remember, it's fine. And we're going to call that closing down the topic of this repairing of the impoliteness. She's saying, okay, this is done. It's fine. The next thing she says, but anyway, and we've all used this when we want to change the subject. Yeah, anyway. And from there you move on. It's in the literature, it's called a change of topic token. And that's what it usually does. And the thing she does after that is to have a little laugh and say, yeah, the yeah probably being a kind of confirmation, like let's both agree and then move on. And then she stops talking. And whether this is successful in stopping W from carrying on depends on three things. How effective is this part at shutting down the topic and why? How effective is this anyway part at instigating a change of topic and why? And what effect does this laugh here have and the yeah? Does it contribute to the project to change the topic? And if we look at the continued dialogue, we can see how effective it is.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yes, and you said you were.
Well, anyway.
You were less
Yeah.
adventurous with your language, and you only used safe sentences.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. I'm
That's
sorry.
what we said.
I'll play it one more time just to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yes, and you said you were.
Well, anyway.
You were less
Yeah.
adventurous with your language, and you only used safe sentences.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. I'm
That's
sorry.
what we said.
It hasn't worked, has it? W basically starts from where he left off. He uses this device here called this is called a recycled turn beginning. So he kind of stopped at you were, and then G said these three things here, this three-part move to change the subject, and he just went back and said you were again. Basically, whatever she did in between, it wasn't enough to stop him being able to just start from where he left off. He only needed to repeat those two words to be back in the same position he was before. And from there was nothing to stop him moving on and addressing the topic that she was trying to move away from. He goes on to give this full accounting of saying, oh yeah, and you didn't do very well with your language, did you? The topic change hasn't happened. So this three-part move in its current form, we can call a failure, effectively. And I think if we listen to her voice afterwards, these little circles mark it being quiet and there's a long pause.
Of course you did.
Yeah.
Yes, and you said you were.
Well, anyway.
You were less
Yeah.
adventurous with your language, and you only used safe sentences.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. I'm
That's
sorry.
what we said.
I don't think she sounds very happy personally. That's a subjective analysis, but there it is. You could say, well, this isn't really analyzing G's competence. W is just being a bit rude. W is being a bit horrible. He's being pushy. which is where we kind of have to go back to the idea of interactional competence being a property of these two people working together. It's whether they achieve what they need to achieve by working together to do it. And they're kind of working in different directions here. So overall, we can say that her strategy failed to achieve what it was aiming to achieve. And that's our conclusion from this part. Now, if we move on to our second extract for comparison, this one is really long, so I'll play it all the way through first, just so we can get familiar with it. Background is this is from the 21st class they had together. So 18 hours of interaction have happened between the first one and this one, and we're going to see whether her strategy for changing the subject has evolved in that time.
There is a phrase in Chinese, it is used to describe if someone is like very energetic, extremely energetic, like someone actually inject you with the blood of a chicken.
Oh, heavens.
Right. Yeah, like I think it probably will be translated in like someone actually put adrenaline in you.
Okay. Or there's
yeah.
Do you mean like a kind of nervous energy or a good energy?
Good energy. Like maybe too good.
Right. Yeah, being kind of bouncy.
Yeah, like that. And a bit what's the word again? It's getting late. Well, it's too late for me to come up with words. Anyway, so yeah, I think students tend to like teachers who are very energetic.
But I mean, we all believe that, but you know that I'm okay. Before we start talking about whether it succeeded and why, let's go through the context, the beginning part again, to make sure that we know what the lead up, the build up is all about. So this all this stuff in blue, she said very energetic. It's like someone injected you with the blood of a chicken, is the Chinese phrase. You translate it as someone putting adrenaline in you. She's looking for a better expression than very energetic. She's got a very specific idea in mind about this quality of a person, this attribute of a person. And she wants to describe them with more nuance than she gets from just saying very energetic. So she's looking for ways to kind of upgrade that expression. And she tries the chicken blood one, and W doesn't seem to react to that very well. He's just a bit surprised. Then saying, oh, how about saying, someone put adrenaline in you? And she says this with questioning intonation. She's explicitly saying, like, does this make sense? Is this a good expression? And W's reaction is okay, or there's and so we can say he's not approving this this suggestion of someone putting adrenaline in you. He's not saying yes, that's the right expression. But he is joining in the search. He's saying, okay, let's do some work to find the expression that we need. He starts that work by quizzing her about the things she's talking about. So it's like, do you mean a kind of nervous energy or a good energy? So he wants to get a better understanding of the idea she's trying to express so that he can help in the search. She answers, says, yeah, it's good energy, maybe too good. And that gives him enough information to make a suggestion. He gives this one bounty. Okay. Or there's
yeah.
Do you mean like a kind of nervous energy or a good energy?
Good energy. Like maybe too good.
Right. Yeah, being kind of bouncy. And her reaction to this is what we're really interested in down here. So first she reacts to bouncy. She says, yeah, it's good. She likes it. Like that. But it's not a complete solution. Then she says, and a bit. And what she does by that, it says, okay, bouncy's good, but I need to add something to it. You've made your contribution. I'm going to add something of mine. And then that will be the right answer. That'll be what we're looking for. And she says, starts looking for this word, but then we have a 1.7 second pause. And following that, she goes into this what's the word again, and you can see from this arrow she drops her tone and goes quieter, and that marks this as self-talk. She's not asking W what the word is, she's talking to herself here. Sorry.
Yeah, I like that. And a bit what's the word again?
Okay, so she started a word search, is what that's generally called, and it's run into trouble. The really important point here is that generally in a language lesson, if the less proficient participant starts a word search and doesn't finish it, it's kind of invoking the teacher authority or the language expertise of the other person. And in all of the literature that I've been able to find about word searches like this, it always turns out that either G would solve the thing herself and provide the word she's looking for, or if she doesn't, W will take it as a summons for his language expertise and his teacher role, and he'll come in and start making an issue of solving this word search. And as we know about G, that's not what she wants to happen. She's in the middle of a conversation here, and she doesn't want it to turn into teaching time. So the way she stops that from happening is what we see next. Let's play.
It's getting late. Well, it's too late for me to come up with words. Anyway, so yeah, I think students tend to like teachers who are very energetic.
Okay, I'm going to break this down bit by bit. So this red part, it's getting late. This is still self-talk, by the way, or it's marked as it. It's still quiet and still in low tone. So it's getting late. This is an in-breath, and the equals means there's no gap between these two things. The dot H is an in-breath. Well, it's these pointy brackets mean this part's quick. So in-breath, well, it's too late, short pause, little laugh, for me to come up with words. And then the quiet part ends, so that's the end of the self-talk. What she's done here is she's accounted for the trouble. She's given a reason for it, and she said it's not a vocab issue. It's not because I've got non-native speaker vocab. It's because I'm tired. Hey W, it's 10 o'clock at night. You're tired too. It's not a time for anyone to be, performing vocab searches. And so that's some preliminary work to push away the teacher summons that she might have done here. The next part is the anyway, same as the previous one, and this time it comes in a lot louder. It's a lot more vigorous, and actually it's good that W tries to say something here, because he I think he latches onto this little space here where it's kind of the end of a sentence and she breathes in, and he starts trying to say something, and this big loud anyway just smashes it like a big hammer.
It's too late for me to come up with words. Anyway, so yeah, I think students tend to like teachers who are very...
Not sure if you heard him trying to mumble his way in there and failing. I'll play it again.
Late for me to come up with words. Anyway, so yeah, I think...
I hope that that carries over Zoom, but he definitely starts talking there and just gets absolutely washed away in this big loud anyway. So yeah, that's obviously worked a lot better by being louder this time around. And the other really interesting thing she does is it happens in the gaps. Remember I mentioned the in-breaths earlier, and this equals, showing that she latched one sentence onto the next one. This is called a rush through in conversation analysis. It's something you do basically to stop someone else talking when you think they might start. And it means you carry on talking whenever there's a boundary, and you pause to breathe in the middle of sentences when people can't interrupt you. And even when she does that, she keeps the turn by breathing in loudly. So if it starts from this point at the end of what's the word again, let's just have another listen and see if you can find any point when W could have started talking without doing quite a rude interruption.
again. It's getting late. Well, it's too late for me to come up with words. Anyway, so yeah, I think students tend to like teachers who are very energetic.
But
So yeah, that's the rush through that's made it work. The other thing she does is this. Yeah, I think students tend to like teachers who are very energetic. And what that does is it closes down the expression hunt. It's saying, okay, we're going to stop looking for words. It abandons the word search, abandons this whole sequence of trying to find a word, and she just uses very energetic, which, if you remember, she had actually used a lot earlier and considered not good enough. But she brings it back in here, and then I think the most interesting thing she does is she says, yeah, I think students tend to like teachers who are very energetic, which is what she had been about to say up here. It's before all of this started, it's just the informative declarative sentence that started this whole thing. And it kind of says to W, the thing that you have to say next is going to be a response to this. And this is like 10 steps back in the conversation. Now, for W to then, from having been placed here, she's basically teleported him back up here and said, now you may continue talking. And for him to then undo that and go all the way back down here and say, no, let's finish the word search, is really hard structurally, because it would mean undoing her big long teleport and kind of just undoing her cancellation of all of this stuff. She's done a big teleport, and then to do one back, it would be an explicit resistance. It would be saying to her like, no, you're not going to have your way. And people do all kinds of things to avoid doing that in conversation. People tend to affiliate with what each other want, and if someone expresses that they want a conversation to go a certain way, we usually bend over backwards, do our best to make that happen. And so if we listen to what happens as a result of that.
To like teachers who are very energetic.
But I mean, we all believe that, but he carries on. He doesn't do any teacher work. He doesn't say, let's go back and find that word. He just responds to what she has said. And so the word search is abandoned successfully. And that might seem like a small thing, but abandoning a word search in a language lesson is actually quite a big deal, because it never happens. I've never seen it happen anywhere, and I've read a lot about word searches looking for a thing like that. And it is a pretty big thing to successfully abandon a word search. And so if we say, okay, what we've got here are the ingredients of a successful topic change, we need to have a close look at what she did. So the accounting for the trouble, saying it's not because of my vocab, it's because we're tired and because it's late, that was kind of a preface to it. But then the rush through, blocking W from jumping in, the big loud anyway that smashed that interruption on the head when it was most likely to come in, and then the sequential thing, moving it onto the previous topic, effectively going like 2 minutes back in the conversation and starting again from there. That was enough to make it impossible or undesirable for W to start being teacher. And as a result, they carried on just having a chat. So if we go back to the two questions I asked, what are these interactional features? And let's have some evidence of them. Let's call this one how to make sure you don't get ignored when changing the subject with an anyway. We've got an example of it being done badly, and we've got an example of it being done really, really well. And I think I can't give all of my data now, but I've got a lot of data from between these two classes as well that shows it kind of in developmental stages. And I think what we've got here is evidence that that G learned to do this over the course of those 18 classes. I hope that's interesting, just purely from a point of, that's interesting. As a teacher, these are kind of, I'm very aware that I've done 28 minutes, so I you might want to come back to the video take these takeaways. What I really hope more than anything is that you've thought, oh, this conversation analysis thing sounds interesting. I might have to look into that. And also that you will kind of go away thinking maybe there is a benefit to just having unstructured, messy, natural chat in classes. I think those were the two things that I wanted people to think. I hope that's been achieved. These are my references. Again, it'll have to be screenshotted. I can't talk through all of them. But yeah, if this sounds interesting, then I really hope that some of you will go and look at some of this stuff, because this, I think, is the most relevant and interesting stuff to read about it. And with that, I will end. Thank you all very much for attending.